Our guest for today is Nhi Lê. She is a principal at AIC. Hi, Nhi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad to be here and to reconnect with you after CEVF in Astana. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Almaty.
Yep, in Almaty. First of all, tell us a bit about yourself, where your journey started.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, it's been kind of a bit of a roundabout journey that's led me to AIC, or the longer term name for that is Alpha Intelligence Capital. So my background is starting from birth. I'm Vietnamese, and we moved to the United States when I was young. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, as an immigrant and a refugee from Vietnam, and started my journey in VC more on the tech side and deep tech side than the VC side. So I went to Georgia Tech, did a double bachelor's degree in biomedical engineering and material science engineering, and that's where I got my first access to venture as an entire space. I did an internship, and after my internship in undergrad, I was offered a chance to join as an early employee of that startup. And I decided that, I didn't want to join that startup, but I did like the startup space. And so after that, I was involved in a couple of startup formation activities through the Department of Biomedical Engineering at Georgia Tech. After undergrad, I decided that I wanted to go get my PhD. I am a Gates Millennium Scholars recipient. So the Gates Millennium Scholars program is a 10-year fellowship program that was designed by Bill and Melinda Gates to increase the number of underrepresented minorities in the United States who go on to get higher education. And so that fellowship allowed me to get 10 years worth of training. And part of that training is to get paid to go to get a PhD. So I decided I would get a PhD, and I wanted to get a PhD in an area that I thought would be directly translatable. So something that, I could do research in that could lead to something tangible, usable within our lifetime. When I applied to my PhD program, I was thinking about a couple of things. I wanted a criteria for an institution that, one, had translatable research. Two, I wanted to find a professor that already had a track record of translation. And at that point in my journey, my definition of translation was a startup. And so I found a professor doing stem cell research at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, who had already had a successful startup. And that was when I discovered that the university itself had a very strong tech transfer office. That is an office that does licensing, patenting, and then helps companies spin out or works with large corporates. And because of that, I decided to go to University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I worked very closely with my advisor there to help spin out a company from my thesis research that ended up getting patented by the Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation, the tech transfer office at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. After that, it was, I think, the startups space is hard. It's
Yep.
very hard. It's a certain kind of crazy. It takes a certain kind of crazy, like the good kind of crazy, to be wild enough to say, I'm going to go start something new that no one has ever started before. And I want to at some point get paid to do it. But for now, I'm going to pay. I'm not going to pay. I'm not going to accept pay. And I'm going to put my own money into it and have it be very risky. And so I think, I did that with my advisor for a little bit and decided that that really wasn't really where I wanted to spend my time. I wanted to be on the other side of the table, making the decisions. And so I moved from my PhD work and the startup into the venture space by working at an accelerator. Then after a couple of years at the accelerator, that was kind of like the foray into it. And that kind of springboarded into working at Wharf Ventures, running a family office based out of Singapore, and now to AIC.
Mhm. Uh, tell us a bit about the AIC, Alpha Intelligence Capital.
Yeah. So Alpha Intelligence Capital is a global VC fund. We have offices in Paris, in Singapore, and in San Francisco. And we specifically invest in what we call advanced AI, so advanced artificial intelligence, which means artificial intelligence driven companies that are based on deep algorithmic science and fueled by years of engineering and research. We were founded in 2018 by our founder, Antoine Blondeau, who is a serial entrepreneur, 3 times entrepreneur, very successful, has 25 years of experience commercializing artificial intelligence, to bring the artificial intelligence technologies that are very, developed very heavily in research labs, bringing that into markets. So the first company that he started and sold was a company that was in predictive texting. A second company was, part of the project that ended up becoming Siri, the artificial intelligence programming that is the smart assistant on the iPhone. And then the third company that he started and ended up selling is Sentient Technologies. And that company, by 2017, when he transitioned out of the company to found our Alpha Intelligence Capital, AIC, it was the most well-funded AI company in the world, and it was doing distributed AI. So figuring out how to get AI so that you're not reliant on one single server and one single location to serve a global audience. We were founded in 2018, and we are now in Fund 2. So in Fund 1, we've been fairly successful. We've had 7 exits to date, and we, invest in deep, advanced AI. Deep tech is cutting edge, and by investing in that, we've done fairly well in terms of exits. But we've also been able to focus on deep tech, and that has generated an opportunity for us to be very successful in investing in the cutting edge of AI. And what I mean by that is the cutting edge of AI investment thesis for us allowed us to invest in generative AI 4 years ago. 3 of our exits is in the generative AI space. And 4 years ago, generative AI was kind of a novelty for a lot of people. But we saw that potential because we were investing in the cutting edge of AI, and that's been fairly successful for us.
Are you from the beginning in AIFC? From the
No,
Fund 1?
no. I joined AIC, gosh, coming on to 9 months ago now.
Mm.
I and AIC, was a fund that I worked with and collaborated with when I was at a family office based out of Singapore. And of all the AI and thesis specific funds that I saw, I was most impressed by the thesis at AIC and the team at AIC. And so, when I was thinking about, where do I really want to specialize, I wanted to come specialize in AI. I wanted to do it at AIC, and I wanted to do it with the team at AIC.
Yep, all right. So you are in the San Francisco office or in Singapore?
Yeah, in the San Francisco office. Yeah.
And you also work in Singapore, right?
I did. I worked in Singapore for with a Singapore-based family office. I helped set that family office up, and then I helped set up the venture arm of that family office to invest in VC funds and startups globally.
Do you see some differences in the San Francisco Valley and Singapore and Southeast Asia in general in terms of the venture capital and the startup
Yes,
ecosystem itself?
yes. Oh my gosh, absolutely. I mean, worlds apart, literally, literally a world apart. But also just in terms of how mature the ecosystem is, the types of deals that come out of those ecosystems. Um, there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of potential in Southeast Asia, driven by Singapore, Indonesia, in East Asia, in Taiwan, Vietnam. Vietnam is another very big emerging market for venture capital. But each of those have specific areas that they're very, very good at. And specific verticals where I've seen really promising deals because of the talent pipeline, government support, the infrastructure that's there that's able to help those companies kind of grow. In the Bay Area, I think because it's just such an older, more established, bigger ecosystem, you can pretty much find almost any kind of vertical, and you'll find really, really successful startups coming out of all of those different verticals.
And do you have some kind of few startups that you led at the AIFC, the investment in that you can highlight?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll talk about one
Mm-hmm.
of them, which is my very, very first deal at AIC, and this was an, a deal that I very first deal started on it on the very first day, and we closed that deal within a week. So
Nice,
when
nice.
yeah, sometimes people say that there's a kind of saying that is drinking from a fire hose, and this was drinking from a fire hose in terms of onboarding onto AIC. So the company, the name is Our Next Energy, and the acronym for it is ONE. And it was my first investment when I was at AIC. The company is based out of Michigan in the United States. And what they do is they have a dual chemistry. So they take two different battery chemistries. They figure out how to maximally put it together and have it collaboratively work so that it's a synergistic effect between the two. One side of the chemistry is great for faster energy production but lower power. On the other side is slower energy production, but higher power, longer lasting. And what they use it for, Our Next Energy, what one uses this dual chemistry for is for electric vehicle batteries as well as electric grid scale storage. This deal was it's in a vertical that is near and dear to my heart in the sustainability and as well as in the mobility space, but it's also probably got one of the best teams I've ever seen in my entire career. So the CGO, the CEO Mujib, uh, comes from a 30-year history of electric vehicle development. He started at Ford, then went on to work at Apple Car. Then he worked in a company that made chemistry, dual chemistry, and new chemistry batteries for electric vehicle space. And when we invested, they were getting ready to raise their Series B. He had a team of more than 10 people of just this part of the team. I mean, the team at that point was very big, but more than 10 of those people had worked with Mujib for the entirety of his career. So in terms of strong team, strong CEO, big potential market, very advanced technology, and big potential impact, it was already there. And then on top of that, they had Mujib is an amazing technologist, but also an amazing salesperson because he actually truly understands the industry needs. And he had already had commitments of $4 billion worth of sales of the battery when it was ready to be manufactured and produced for widespread commercialization.
You said that one was raising the Series B round, right?
Yes. Yep.
So it means that the startup had already some kind of traction. Like, what do you value the most? The team, the people from the startup, or the numbers, the traction, what do you value the most?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and I think the answer to that might be more complicated than it can be straightforward. And I don't know if your listeners will find this very concise and helpful. It depends. It depends on the stage in which you're investing. So for us, our sweet spot at AIC is that A and B stage entry. And at the A and B stage entry, we're looking for some traction. We're looking for a very strong team, and we're looking for the potential and a clear path to an exit. At the seed stage, we're investing in the team. We expect companies will pivot. We expect the technologies will hit road bumps as you're developing out the technology and the product. But we're investing in the team. I mean, the team is the number one most important criteria at a seed stage, pre-seed stage investment. A and B, team, super strong, absolute criteria. But we also do need to see that there is some proof that the market is big enough, that the product is suitable for the need in the market, and that customers are willing to pay. And then there's that product market fit is the primary criteria that we use to say, is the product that you're developing crucial enough that not only are customers willing to pay, but they're dying to pay for it because they need it so much.
Yep. We met at the forum in Almaty, where
Yes.
the Nhi was the speaker at the panel session. called AI: How to Differentiate the Hype from the like real decent technology. And can you uh, repeat your answers at the panel session for our listeners on the podcast? How to
Oh,
differentiate the hype with the generative AI from the true AI startups like you mentioned, our next energy, for example.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Just one, the ask is a big ask. I don't know if I'll remember exactly what I said, but I can expand on. The other is just as a reminder. I do want to give a shout out here. Dimash, I think we actually met at the Neuris Pitch Day.
Yep,
And
yep.
yeah, and I want to give a shout out to that because I think, you said what was I looking for in terms of investment criteria? And I want to go back to what I said about pre-seed and seed and kind of give Neuris a shout out. So I met Neuris in 2018 and went to Austin in 2019 to help evaluate their startup ecosystem. And that ecosystem has come very, very, very far. Now there are startups that have already exited. They're at that pitch day event in Almaty. I mean, the team was so intentional in setting that pitch day instead of in Astana in Almaty, so that the people who are going through their programming can go to the CE VF event. And at that event, I was looking at the teams, but I was surprised. I was very, very pleasantly surprised by how much traction a lot of those very early stage projects already had, and how mature the products were. So that I just wanted to give that shout out, and I think the Kazakh startup ecosystem has come leaps and bounds so much further than what I saw in 2019, and it's really, really promising.
I hope
Um,
so. So the question is how to differentiate the legit AI startup from the
oh, yes, yes. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah. So I got distracted by giving Nurse a shout out. So I think you can tell that I'm a little bit biased in favor of Nurse there. Um, how to tell the hype from the high potential. It was the topic of that. And I think, I came into that panel having some preconceived notions, and I was very, very glad to kind of be dispelled of some of those notions by the fellow panelists. I'm still going to stick to some of the points I said. I think that there are, um, in my particular space, in AI, there is a lot of buzz around particular applications of technologies and particular types of technologies in AI. And this is a part of it that I think that I'm deviating a little bit from my answer because I was informed and enlightened by my fellow panelists. Somebody on that panel mentioned that the word hype has a very negative connotation, and I will agree with that. I think there's a lot of investment and a lot of probably too fast and careless investment in some spaces in AI right now. For example, in generative AI, there's a lot of money going into that. In large language models, there's a lot of money going to that. And I don't think all of those startups are going to survive. There are other companies. There are companies in those two areas that I think are very, very strong, and I'll go into what that means. But I also think that there are certain verticals that use AI, conventional AI as well as generative AI, that are very, very big, that don't get and very promising, that don't get enough attention. So, for example, cloud infrastructure. A lot of the AI that we use is deployed via cloud, and there's just not enough investment in cloud infrastructure. So I'm looking at a deal right now that is spun out by a professor in the United States that is looking at how do you use AI to more effectively figure out how to reduce your cloud computing spend by optimizing the balance between dedicated versus on-demand cloud server. Very, very complicated. If you're not in that space, you don't really, fully understand the value of it. But I think any of your listeners, even if they're in the AI or not space, can appreciate that there's not unlimited cloud servers. right? And as more people are using AI, there's going to be more demand and more strain on those systems. So the more efficient we make it, the better it is for everybody, not only just the companies in reducing their spend, but also improving our performance, also making it easy for more people to be able to get access to it because the cost of the end product goes down. So I think that's an area that is very promising. Now, across the board, regardless of the verticals you're in, the question is, how do you identify a high potential opportunity? And it goes back to what I said earlier. First, is the team there? I think that in order for you to invest in any company, everyone should be looking at the team to start. And the team should encompass two core criteria. One is, do they have the capacity um, to execute? And execution is not just, the day to day, but I'm talking about hiring, scaling. Are they leaders? Is the leadership somebody that is aspirational enough and inspirational enough to hire a team that is committed to the same goal as him or her? Is the leadership somebody that's going to be able to go raise money? Because on my end, I'm an early stage investor. So if I'm investing, then I need to understand, will you be able to take my dollar, use that for runway to show traction, to go out and raise additional dollars so that my dollar is 1 to 10 or 1 to 20 or 1 to 30 in value based on your ability to go raise money after I've invested. So I think, there's that execution side. And then on the other side is the knowledge side. So the knowledge side means twofold. One, technology knowledge, and then market application knowledge. I cannot stress importantly enough. If you have technical knowledge, then you know how the technology works. And you know what the opportunities are and the limitations of the technology that has been developed. So I think that leadership at any startup needs to be able to have that technical knowledge in-house. We're not talking about advisors. We're not talking about, outsourced talent. We're talking in-house, crucially involved in making business decisions. Then you need business decision makers who are actually business aware. So what I mean by that is that um, do you have someone on your team that can speak like the customer, think like the customer, know the market enough to know what the form factor of your product is and how to price it? So that's the first thing. But the second thing is, do you understand that market enough to understand where the biggest pain points are that people are not just willing to pay, but dying to pay for a solution if it exists? And so that kind of threefold criteria for the team, I call it the trifecta team. And I think that regardless of the vertical you're in, if you can find the trifecta team and then match it to a big enough market opportunity, that's where high potential is, regardless of the vertical.
All right. One of the topics that I'm really curious last month, it's a data-driven VC and how venture capital implementing AI in their work process. Does the Alpha Intelligence Capital have some kind of model to help their principals, associates to work with the startups to optimize the process?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that's an incredibly, thoughtful question. And it is a question that ask ourselves. I think industry asks of us, um, and our LPs ask of us. And the answer to that is absolutely yes. And I think every single investor, every single entrepreneur should be using a data-driven approach. And in my opinion, I'm biased, so take this as for what it's worth. In my opinion, everybody should be leveraging the AI tools out there for data. So at AIC, we use a combination of external and internally developed sources, the tools, my apologies. So at AIC, we use a combination of internally developed tools as well as externally available tools that are commercialized by startups and bigger companies to help us with a very data-driven approach to investing. And that where those tools come in is not so much on the making the decision side for us, but helping improve our productivity and reducing the strain, the grunt work, the slog that you have to do in order for you to be able to get to a point where you have enough insight and data to actually act on it. and I'll go into what that means, but I just want to clarify that I think there are some tools out there, if you look, there are some tools out there that claim that they can use AI to help decide on what to invest. And I don't think we're there yet. I
Mm.
think AI can help inform, but AI should not be making decisions for us. I think it takes a little bit away from our own value in our humanity, and it takes a bit away from our own autonomy when AI as a tool is doing things for us end to end. Um, Internally, we've developed a tool that is a natural language processing tool that allows us at AIC to comb through all the different data that we have, very disparate, unstructured data, and allows us to take that and pull it together, aggregate it, um, structure it, and then pull out the VC relevant, deal relevant insight that we need. So I don't doubt that you probably spend a lot of time reading a lot of documents. At Big Sky, you probably get hundreds and hundreds of deals on an annual basis. And between those hundreds of deals, let's just say, let's say you get 100 deals that you personally are looking at every month. And each of those deals, you get 10, just 10 documents from each of those deals. Now we're looking at 1,000 documents that you have to comb through to be able to identify which ones you even want to spend more time on. And that's not including emails, WhatsApp exchanges, looking at the website. We're just talking about what the founders have sent to you, right? So it's just so many different sources. And sometimes it's in text format, Excel format, PDF, images. I mean, it's just so many different sources of information. So how do you yourself efficiently spend time combing through all of that data so you can pull out the information that you crucially need for that early quick vetting, then deeper vetting? What we've done at AIC is we've developed our own tool specific for VC, the way we do it for the data points that we really find very important at the different stages of that due diligence process.
Right, thank you. What are the two other verticals in deep tech sector that you are really curious about today? We already mentioned that you have the bio background, that you led the first investment in the energy sector, your first investment, and we already touched the AI in different use cases.
Yeah, yeah. I thank you so much for asking that question, and thank you for so much for bringing back, my deep tech background. I think that because of my deep tech background, I'm very interested in deep tech itself. So, I think there's a lot of opportunity in CPGs and in Web3 and crypto. But for me, my own particular interest lies in the very hard, very deep tech. They're in that space. I think there's two areas that don't get enough attention or appreciation, and I am so passionate about it. And if I could, I would try to figure out how to invest in it through AIC. I don't think that's possible, but that's okay. That's okay. You never say never.
What are
First,
those?
okay, yeah. So first is in the fusion space. So we're going back
Oh, really?
to sustainability. Yes, fusion. I think that we've seen so much news coverage about fusion and investment in fusion, and it's so incredibly expensive. But fusion energy has so much potential, and we're now at that like cutting edge. We're now at the point where the technology has been developed enough through research that we actually might be realistically 10 to 20 years away from something that might be usable. Now, will that be the most efficient source of energy? I don't think so. Just like, if you think about it, 15 years ago, solar panels were not all that great, right? But now we use solar panels pretty much across the world for lots of different applications, both residential and commercial. I think fusion is at that point now where the technology is mature enough that we can start building products and services that within 10 years we'll get that really inefficient version of it, but it's the step we need to do if we ever hope to generate enough energy for all of us globally to use and enough clean energy so that we're not wrecking our planet for the generations to come. And one of the companies in this space, if anybody's interested in fusion, look up, Commonwealth and a couple of these others. But there's another company called Realta that's based out of Madison, Wisconsin, where I got my PhD. And the CEO there is, he is a technologist. He's done 2 startups. He's done VC globally, and now he just raised his first round, and it between him and a team of 3 professors that have come out of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I mean, that one is one I'm gonna bet on.
They're on the seed stage, right? First round.
Yeah. So they just raised their first round. Yes, they just raised their
I
first
just
round.
raised.
Yes, they just raised their first round, and Wharf, the company I used to work for, the tech transfer office, invested in it, as well as a couple of very renowned investors. So if anybody's interested, check them out. They're called Realta. The other vertical, I think, is very important. Goes back to what I said about, how do we support?
Wait. So you do believe that the nuclear fusion is a venture type deals?
I do believe nuclear fusion is a venture type deal, but it's not a venture type deal for every venture capitalist.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is that you're probably not going to get your money back in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
You don't expect a 10-year return of return the fund. But I think this might be a 15-year, right? So if you're a VC fund that has the ability to be a little bit more evergreen, if you're a VC fund that is open to selling your in the secondaries market when the end of your fund life goes, I think this could be a 10x return for those who are looking to sell in the secondaries market but not kind of see the end of the line for an investment like this. And then for those who can have the patience enough to invest long term, I think this is a return the fund, more than return the fund type of investment. Absolutely. And I will bet Realta is one of those companies that can return your fund 10 times.
What do you think of the statement of the Helion, the Sam Altman-backed startup, about the commercialization of the fusion? I don't remember, in the 7 years they said, or something like that. What do you think of that? Is it possible?
I think 7 years. 7 years is around the approximate. I said roughly 10, and I think 7 is pretty much close to that. Just as a caveat, it will not be the most efficient, and it will not be the cheapest source of energy that we will have. It will not, in 7 to 10 years, it will not replace, all the other sources of energy we have. But I think that something commercializable can be possible within 10 years. Now, what does that form factor look like? It might be a small limited run. It might be the same way that, sometimes when we first started with corporates, when corporates first started using solar and wind, they still relied on fossil fuel, and then they just started trickling in small amounts of renewables into their total consumption because they were committed to that goal. 7 to 10 years, I think that is realistic. 20 years, I think we might be on a horizon where we could have something that is efficient enough. And now you see homes that are entirely powered by renewable energy. And I think that's realistic 20, 30 years from now.
All right. I'm really glad to hear about the nuclear fusion. I'm really a fan of that. And not only the fusion, and also the new opportunities, new technologies in the fission market. But what was the next? The second one, the second vertical.
Yeah, I'm glad you're enthusiastic about fusion, because I am too. So we can be enthusiastic fans of fusion and Realta together.
From my childhood, I played the games. The how does it called? It's like the nuclear punk, where I read the books, watched the movies about the future of the world, where the nuclear energy is the main type of the energy, and everything ends up with the like atomic war, something like that.
just I think, fusion is not is not going to be capable of the end of the world scenario that you've seen. Just as a clarification, nuclear fusion and nuclear fission are two very different things.
Yep, yep,
And so
yep.
if you've seen those movies and you've played games that are nuclear energy is the end of the world, those are more fission than fusion. So don't worry, I
Yeah,
won't not enthusiastic about things that can end the world. We're thinking save the world.
yeah, I believe too. That's just the science fiction that I watched in my childhood.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
let's move next. Uh,
Yeah, the next is a little bit science fiction also. I think that there is a field in food tech that is underappreciated. We're moving in a direction where we're gonna have roughly 10 billion people by 2030 in the world. The challenge of feeding 10 billion people are astronomical. And we don't invest enough into our food infrastructure. We don't invest enough into food innovation. We think food is kind of unsexy, but think about how much time you spend eating or thinking about food. I do. I spend a lot of time thinking about food. The other is that a lot of our cultures and the love languages that we've built for the cultures that we live in are centered on food. For example, in Vietnamese culture, the way that we show love is we don't verbally say I love you, but we will cook for each other, we'll serve you more when you're at our dinner table. And so food is not only crucially important for our physical survival, but it's also so important as a culture. Now, 10 billion is a lot of people to feed, and there's not enough innovation in food in order to be able to feed all those people. And there is not enough investment in the infrastructure needed to feed all those people without wrecking the planet. So what I mean by that is that a lot of ways that food are grown right now, they're grown in disparate places. Then they're shipped out globally. And so then you have the places that grow them have more access to them. The places that don't have the capabilities to grow and manufacture them don't have access to them. So there's huge inequities. There's huge challenges to logistically distributing that food. And I think food tech is an area that can use AI, but in and of itself has a lot of technologies that are promising. Let me mention a few. One, alternative protein. Um, in the alternative protein space, we talk a lot about fake meat, but we're not just talking fake meat. We're talking about what about eggs? Eggs is the way that we get eggs are not very humane. I won't go into the gory details, but look into the way that chicken farmers process chickens to be able to grow to cultivate chickens to make eggs. It's not very humane. Now there's lab grown eggs that are very very good, that taste like eggs, that are starting to become closer to the cost of actual eggs that you buy in the grocery store. And so these innovations are so important for the purpose of one, now you don't need a chicken farm in the middle of Astana in order to get eggs, right? If you can get a lab or you can get a facility for bioprocessing that allows you to get eggs, you don't need a chicken farm in the middle of Astana. The other is now the people who just really struggle ethically with how the egg industry is, how the chicken and egg industry operates, you can now eat eggs, and eggs are such an important source of protein. So I think, there's that. And then there's lab grown meats. How do you grow meat so that you're not growing cows who put out methane and increase greenhouse gas emissions? I mean, there's so many innovations in it. And AI can play a space in that in optimizing those processes. But I think that wet lab, biology, chemistry, fermentation, those are all so important. And we should be investing in those areas more.
yeah, that would be really hard to like change the mindset of the Kazakhs to eat the cell-based meat, eat the cell-based horse, for example. That would be really hard.
I I would be interested in seeing a cell-based version of kumis. I would love to see that.
Even my parents, they're like freaking out when they see some kind of GMO products.
Yes, yes. Culturally, absolutely. Same with my parents. I don't think within my parents' lifetime I could get them knowingly and willingly to eat lab grown meat. And even now, if you've seen like Impossible Foods, there's Beyond Meats. There's these plant-based meats. So they're
Yes.
not lab grown, they're plant-based,
Yeah.
right? And there's plant-based meats, and that also is an innovation that we should head in the direction of investing in, because guess what? Plants are good for the environment. If you grow plants will pull carbon dioxide from the environment, and it reduces the CO2, and it's good for our earth. So we can talk about plant-based meat too, and that is in a direction that we should be investing more. But my parents, they think that's freaky. They think that is like unnatural. You will not catch them eating an Impossible Burger. And
Yeah.
that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. If even a small portion of us, a very, very minute portion of us, even if just you and I, right, ate alternative sources of protein, even one time a week, it makes an astronomical difference. And all change starts with something small. And so we don't all have to do major overhauls in our energy consumption or our food consumption to be able to make a difference.
I believe that it just a few days ago had the license to sell the cell-based meat in the US. Am I right?
Yes, yes, absolutely, yes. And there are a couple of other, if you're interested in the food space,
Mhm.
one of the funds that I invested in is called Main Sequence Ventures, based out of Australia, and they have a very
You invested in the fund or in the startup?
in the fund.
Ah,
Yep.
uh-huh.
So that Main Sequence Ventures has a very strong portfolio of food tech, and they cover meat, dairy, eggs, and I mean it's astronomical. And they part of their portfolio is companies that now you can go out and buy their product. You can go out and buy the product. So it's very, very promising. Just check it out if you're interested in it.
Yeah. All right. We mentioned lots of topics. Like you had lots of knowledge in different sectors. What's your content diet looks like? How do you consume the information? In this age of the lots of information.
Yeah. Oh boy. It is absolutely an age of information, and it's also the age of disinformation. So not every source of information you get access to is quality information.
Yeah, that's
I
why I said the diet, the content diet. 100% you should have the diet.
right, right, right. Um I I think that I spend a lot of time reading for work. I spend a lot of time reading for work. A lot of my content comes from LinkedIn, comes from research articles because of my deep tech background, comes from Discord, and several other platforms. So a lot of my content for work comes there. I just want to specify that we spend so much time at work that everyone, in my opinion, should try to take some time and spend time reading for leisure. About 3 years ago, I decided that once a week, I was going to make sure that I spent at least 2 hours reading things that were fun. And it was so uncomfortable. The first time I picked up a book that was for fun, I was skimming it. I was skipping every other word, trying to figure out what the key point was. And that's not how you read for fun. Reading for fun leisure was so weird, because I was like, oh, how is this going to help me do my job better? And it doesn't directly, but it indirectly makes you a better person, makes you a more well-rounded, likable person. It makes you just better company when you're not as stressed. So it definitely makes you better at your work and at your life. So everyone should spend some time reading just for fun. Um, on the work side, I'm now at a point in my career where I can get sources of information separate from reading. And I think you had another podcaster in a VC in the space tech side who said it takes about 5 years to really develop your network
Mhm.
and really get ingrained into VC. And I am a true believer in that 5 to 7 window in any career. I think it takes 5 to 7 years to really build up a very strong network, regardless of what career you're in. And that network then becomes your source of information if you know how to leverage it well. So, for example, we have advisors at AIC. I have my own mentors and advisors who are willing to give me time where every once in a while I'll pick their brain and say, hey, I don't know this. Can you just walk me through it and help me understand it? And they kind of then give you the lay of the land. Then they say, here's reading that I think are very quality that help me understand. So now you're getting vetted information from experts. The the caveat there is it takes 5 to 7 years to build a network of people who will care enough about you to answer your calls or emails or hop on a call, but also be be trusting enough of your intentions, know you well enough, and is trustworthy enough to say, Nhi, that question you asked wasn't entirely right. Or Dimash, the question you asked is I will answer, but I would also suggest that we talk about this thing that you didn't know to ask. And that you don't know is where your limit of learning is. And your network, if they are well intentioned, knowledgeable enough, and they care enough about you, and your strength of relationship is strong enough with them, your limit of your knowledge doesn't stop at what you don't know and can go out to seek. Your limit of knowledge and learning is at your network's limit. Um, so, reading is one way, podcast is another way, videos is another way, formal education is a great way. Hands-on training through fellowship programs is a great way. But your network, talking to people who just know more than you, is fantastic. And when I say your network who knows more than you, I'm not talking about CEO, COO. I'm talking about literally every single person you talk to knows more than you about something.
Mhm. Do you have some kind of advice on how to expand your network? Because when I was starting my career, like the only thing was just find lots of the peers in the LinkedIn,
Yeah.
send the invite to have a connect. What's your advice to have the like decent, real network that will provide the value, the information, as you said?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. I love the way you phrase that. A real network, a real quality network. Um, I did the same thing as you when I was in my early days in my career. When I was at Georgia Tech as an undergrad, I connected with everybody and got business cards. Back when people used to still hand out business cards, I had a collection of them. Um, there's a very big difference of knowing of somebody that you've met versus actually truly knowing somebody and somebody knowing you. The way that I would cultivate that relationship is that, you know, one, trust that people intrinsically want to do good, that people intrinsically will have good intentions. And so when you go out and network, build a meaningful relationship with somebody beyond work. So for example, you and I, right? We met at NURIS. Um, we saw each other at CEVF, and now we're here. But we didn't talk work the entire time, and I think that's really where trust is built, right? We talked about our families. We talked about your upcoming nuptials. Congratulations in advance.
Thanks,
um,
thanks.
and now we're talking about, how my parents are freaked out by alternative meats. I think, understanding people beyond the scope of the work or the transaction that you want to have with them is the way that you build trust. Because now that I know you've done a lot of gaming and fusion and you like, sustainability, and we've talked a little bit about food. Next time I think about it, I'm going to send something your way and say, hey, FYI, even if it's not transactional for us, even if it has absolutely nothing to do with a deal that, AIC and Big Sky could do together. And I think that's it. It's that think about people that you interact with beyond just what they can do for you and what you can do for them. Think about the person behind it.
Yeah, great, great. Yes. Um, then not about the network, just in general. Do you have some kind of advice, not for the young people, for example, to the me 10 years ago, or the Nhi at the beginning of the career? Uh,
Oh boy, the Nhi at the beginning of the career. I feel like an old soul because I just in my mind when you said it, I was like, gosh, has it been 10 years? um, the I think if you're at the beginning of your career, if you're not, you've had some sort of training, whether it's formal education or you've had some work experience, um, I I think, do things that make you uncomfortable. So what I mean by that is things should make you scared a little bit all the time, right? I saw somebody mention that there's the one third, one third, one third rule. Always in your
mm,
life, you should spend one third of your time like, man, I'm doing awesome. I am just the superstar. You should one third of the time feel like you are just the best there is. One third of the time, you should feel like, oh, I'm doing pretty okay. Yeah, I think I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And one third of the time, you should be scared, just bizarrely scared and being, I don't think I know what I'm doing. I have no idea. I got to go figure it out. And I think it's a healthy balance, enough that you are scared enough to go out and just try your best to learn what you don't know, and then you're also assured enough that you're doing some of the things right. And then you're also confident enough that you have that reassurance that, yeah, you're pretty awesome and you can go, even if you're not doing something right, you have the capability of it. But it's a healthy balance enough that you're not spending all your time doing something right. Therefore, one, if we feel like we're being doing something right all the time, it makes us arrogant. Two, is that if you're doing something right and you're the best person in the room all the time, you're probably in the wrong room. So I think, spend your time one third, one third, one third. The second is just be genuinely curious about, just be genuinely curious. Don't think transactionally. Don't think about, oh, well, if I join this company, they'll pay me this much. And then after they pay me this much, I'll ask for 10% raise. And then within, don't think like that. Just think, where do I go so that I can learn the most with the best people possible? Because your limit of learning is where your network is. So if you learn from people who don't really care about your growth, you're going to be limited by that. So chase the learning opportunities, don't chase the paycheck, and be genuinely curious enough for people to know that you want to learn so they can teach you.
all right, for the finishing the podcast, can you share your scary one third today?
Oh, yes, my scary one third. Oh, um, boy, I might have my one third pie might be very big. And I know that's not how math works. Um, it's deep, it's very deep. Let's say that. Language. Language is one thing that I think I spend time trying to learn new languages. And the reason why I do that is I'm really bad at it to begin with. I'm not. Some people are naturals when it comes to being able to pick up new languages. I met somebody from Moscow who runs a family office, and she spoke English, Russian, French, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And in Kazakhstan, you know, people speak Kazakh, Russian, English, and that's three languages. That's crazy. Um, so I spent some time learning languages because one, I'm not great at it. And two, I think that there are certain things that get lost in translation. So in Vietnamese, for example, the way we say love, there's three different ways to say love. And three different ways to say love encompasses love from like for friends and family. There's love for your romantic partner, and then there's love for mankind. And if you can't understand the nuances of those three different types of love, how can you really truly understand other people and other cultures? So, that's one. The other one third is I made the leap into AI because I don't know AI. I mean, I know AI on a surface level as much as any generalist VC might know AI. So I started investing in AI in 2015. I was at an accelerator program, made my first investment in natural language processing for data analysis. And I was like, that's really interesting. And it's kind of snowballed from there. I've made several other investments. One of those is computer vision investment that was sold to Torque Robotics. It's a Daimler subsidiary. But at some point, I was looking at it and I said, you know what? I'm a deep tech expert. I don't want to be a generalist VC, a generalist deep tech VC, if that's possible. I want to be an expert. So AI is not my wheelhouse. I really struggled with coding. I took one coding class, one programming class in college, and it was my only C. So this is an area that I'm so uncomfortable with, but I like it because I like that one third. If I spend 10 minutes a day on AI and I worked at AIC for 5 years, I've spent astronomically more time on AI than most people have. And so that's an area I'm scared of, and I love it. I love that scared feeling.
All right. Thanks a lot, Nhi. That was a great, warm, and deep conversation with you.
Oh, thank you so
I
much.
received like lots of the insights and the inspiration from you. Uh,
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the kind words, but I gotta say thank you so much for hosting this. I listened through some of the other podcasts and I love the way that you and Big Sky are committed to building the Kazakh ecosystem and also just bringing in more people into that ecosystem, whether they're in that Central Asia, Central Eurasia region or not. The other is that everything I've said is my opinion, and I think everybody has an opinion. No one thinks there's things. So for you and for your listeners, just it's my own opinion. It's biased and it's nuanced in all the ways that it is. And I am so early in my career. I've so much to learn. And if you interview me in like 10 years when fusion is commercialized, I might have an entirely different opinion.
but I believe that will be really useful for our listeners. And I wish you good luck in your one-third part of your life.
If you ever want to also be scared in the one third and you want to be scared with me, let me know. I'm more than happy to help you be scared with me.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.